Welcome to my channel Sci-Fi Love Story. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. The star station known as Orion Outpost 7 was barely clinging to existence, floating at the edge of a decayed star system. Dust and debris circled the dim sun like memories of a civilization long gone. Lieutenant Jax Marlowe had landed here expecting a routine survey mission, a quiet few days checking radiation levels and recording readings. The kind of work that let a man feel important without anyone noticing. Except Orion Outpost 7 had other plans. As his shuttle descended through the weakened atmosphere of the station's orbiting moon, Jax noticed the first sign that something was wrong. A faint, pulsing glow coming from the debris belt. Not meteorites, not space trash, something alive. He blinked, adjusting the shuttle's sensors. The readings didn't lie. Life signature, active, extremely high energy output, the AI voice intoned, calm but monotone. Jax frowned. That's impossible, nothing could survive here. The sensors insisted. A cluster of readings, moving with precision, intelligence, like it knew he was coming. Jax gritted his teeth and guided the shuttle through the cracks of the moon's unstable orbit, turbulence rocking the cabin like a tantrum. By the time he landed on the cracked surface, the pulsing glow had condensed into a form, a figure, standing calmly amid fractured crystal spires waiting. At first glance she looked human, same posture, same narrow-eyed judgment. Then Jax noticed the ears, long, elegant, tapering backward, unmistakably alien. Her pale skin shimmered faintly with adaptive shielding and her suit hummed softly, interacting with the ambient energy in a way his instruments could barely track. She did not speak. She did not move. She simply waited. "Okay," Jax muttered, stepping onto the unstable ground, his suit's radiation counter ticking nervously. "I'm hallucinating, or you're having a very bad day." "You are late," she said, voice steady, precise, as if measured against some cosmic stopwatch. "I calculated your arrival within a margin of error of 3 minutes." Jax blinked. "Traffic." Her eyes narrowed. "Never mind. You are Explorer Jax Marlowe, human, average health, high-risk tolerance, acceptable." "Acceptable," he echoed. He looked her over, nodding, the calm in her posture, the confidence in her gaze. "You calculated me." "Yes," she replied. "I am Lyra. I am the last of my line." The weight of her words hit Jax before he could respond. "Line?" he asked cautiously. "My species is dying. The plague has spread faster than prediction, crossing galaxies, mutating with every generation. Within 50 years, probability of extinction exceeds 90%. Jax's stomach tightened. "And you're telling me this, why?" Lyra activated a holographic display, symbols and spirals filling the air between them. "Because you are part of the solution. My genetics alone can synthesize the cure, but only with a compatible human genome." Jax laughed, sharp, incredulous. "So, the universe want me to sleep with you, save 2 species in the process." "Marriage," she corrected, tilting her head. "It is not romance, it is mathematics. You consent or both species perish." The ground beneath them groaned, subtle vibrations through the fractured moon. Jax exhaled slowly, letting the absurdity of it sink in. "I was really hoping today would be boring." Lyra's eyes didn't waver. "Hope is statistically inefficient." Jax smirked despite himself. "Yeah, humans are complicated." The shuttle liftoff was tense, the moon fracturing below them as if the universe itself objected to their departure. Lyra's suit interfaced seamlessly with the controls, adjusting environmental systems, optimizing power, guiding them through debris fields. Jax felt both impressed and mildly threatened. "You hacked my ship," he said, arms crossed. "I optimized it," Lyra replied. "Your environmental controls were inefficient, and your emotional regulation in emergencies suboptimal." Jax groaned. "Great, I'm being judged by an alien who may outlive my species by default." They made for the nearest joint research station, neutral territory where humans and aliens attempted coexistence. Lyra moved quietly, studying everything but touching nothing unnecessarily, her long ears flicking with subtle calculation. Once docked, she was immediately whisked away for containment and evaluation. Jax argued fiercely against the clinical detachment of the medical team. "She's not a sample." Lyra's gaze met his. "Technically, I am." Jax growled, "You're a person with extremely rude DNA." She tilted her head, unbothered. "You defend inefficiently." Hours passed in blurred calculations, life support adjustments, and data mapping. Lyra endured without complaint, correcting models, adjusting to human instruments ill-suited for her biology. Jax stayed nearby, watching, learning, feeling the gravity of the situation. Every minute mattered. The plague accelerated. Cross-species contamination had begun sooner than predicted. At one point, Lyra shook slightly, fatigue evident. "You're allowed to stop," Jax whispered. "I am not," she replied. "I am a fixed variable. That is how survival is calculated." It hit Jax harder than he expected. She was not raised to be a person. She was raised to be a solution. By the next day, Lyra's condition stabilized enough for her to walk, though she conserved movement like a scarce resource. Jax followed her, observing every subtle shift. They moved to a temporary suite, isolated but comfortable, where she could rest and still be monitored. "The synthesis protocol requires preparation," she explained. "Physical, neurological, emotional variables." "Emotional," Jax raised an eyebrow. "Yes, you are not interchangeable." They sat across from each other in a field of drifting holograms, Jax examining charts upside down, still feeling involved despite his lack of expertise. "Back home, when someone says we need to talk, it usually doesn't involve saving billions," he muttered. "On my world," Lyra said, "it usually does." Jax laughed softly, then fell silent, considering the weight of the statement. This was no longer a mission. It was a matter of survival, galactic, species-wide survival, and he was now central to it. "Are you angry?" he asked quietly. "Anger implies expectation," Lyra replied. "I was raised knowing my life would be used. Exile was merely an inefficient delay." "That's bleak," Jax admitted. "It is accurate," she said. He shrugged. "Well, I wasn't raised for anything. I kind of stumbled into existence and hoped not to break it. Yet here you are." Lyra looked at him, something uncalculated in her gaze. "You matter now," he said. Her eyes widened slightly. That, she thought, was not in the data. Later, in the protocol chamber, Jax changed into the adaptive suit designed to align with Lyra's physiology. Sensors activated, mapping neural patterns, heartbeats, and genetic resonance. He felt exposed, a human measured against alien precision, but he remained. "This is where I'm supposed to panic, right?" he asked. "Yes," Lyra replied. "Schedule panic for later." The system paused briefly, interference detected. The plague was adapting, but Lyra assured him the synthesis would still work. The window was closing. No pressure. Jax met her gaze. "I'm here. Even knowing you may be remembered only as a function, I'd rather be useful than safe." A subtle shift in her posture, a release. That was not in the data either. Calibration completed with a soft chime. Outside, alarms signaled the plague's advance, but inside, time felt contained. For a brief moment, two species' survival rested in the hands of one human and one alien, bound by mathematics, fate, and mutual choice. "After this vacation?" Jax asked, trying to lighten the mood. Lyra tilted her head. "What is a vacation?" "When nothing is dying and you still don't know what you're doing," he said. She considered it. That sounded appealing. By nightfall, the first synthesis tests began, cautious confirmations, slow progress, curves flattening, numbers climbing incrementally. It was not miraculous. It was process. It was science. It was survival. Jax observed each result, cup of synthetic tea in hand, marveling at the improbability of it all. Lyra stood beside him, color returning, strength returning, her alien elegance softened by subtle relief. "We began it," she corrected, nodding his excitement. "Completion takes time," he admitted, "but at least no one's actively perishing this minute. That's a win." For the first time, Lyra smiled, not calculated, not controlled. The galaxy had not ended, the math had not won, and humanity had proven useful. The station hummed quietly, unaware of the enormity of the work occurring within its walls. Outside, stars burned indifferent and bright. Jax looked at Lyra, and for the first time he felt something unfamiliar, belonging. A faint alarm chimed. Another system flagged by the plague, he sighed. Guess apocalypse is back on schedule. Lyra's lips curved slightly. Then we proceed. And for the first time, human and alien moved forward as equals, not because of prophecy or conquest or destiny, but because one human had decided to act, and one alien had chosen to survive. The station had grown quieter but not silent. Alarms still whispered in the background, each tone a reminder of systems at risk, species at stake, and the fragile thread upon which survival now rested. Jax Marlowe leaned against the edge of the protocol chamber, arms folded, watching Lyra as she monitored the holographic projections floating between them. Every movement she made was precise, deliberate, a dance dictated by biology, mathematics, and a stubborn will to live. "This is going to take longer than I expected," Jax muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Lyra didn't glance at him. Time is irrelevant, progress is measurable. He snorted. "That's one way to look at it. I prefer coffee, sarcasm, and improvisation." She tilted her head slightly, the faintest curve of a smile touching her lips. "Your species has unusual resilience, and poor taste in priorities." Jax grinned. "Resilience is free, priorities are expensive." It had been 3 days since the first calibration, 3 days of incremental progress, monitoring, and subtle victories. Slowly, the synthesis began to show results, genetic markers stabilizing, immune responses adapting, early signs of cross-species compatibility. Lyra's body still bore the exhaustion of her exile, but she remained steadfast. Her long ears twitched in the ambient light of the chamber as if sensing shifts in the very structure of the station. "Caution, Jax," Lyra said suddenly, pointing to a fluctuating line on the projection. "The virus is mutating faster than our predictive models anticipated." Jax leaned closer, squinting at the data. "So, we're still running against time." "Yes," she replied simply, "and failure is not an option." Jax rubbed his face. "I'll make sure it's not." Meanwhile, across the station, political pressures were mounting. Representatives from dozens of species had arrived, some curious, others hostile, each keenly aware that the solution and its consequences rested on this fragile collaboration. The concept of letting a human be central to the survival of an alien species had not been universally welcomed. Some species demanded oversight. Others argued that Lyra herself was a liability, a being to be contained rather than a partner. Yet every plan, every algorithm, eventually led back to the same point. The synthesis required cooperation between Lyra and a human, Jax. And Jax had made it clear he would not be sidelined. "Control is an illusion," he told a particularly irate delegation. "You may have starships, armies, or centuries of tradition. I have one human brain, one stubborn set of hands, and a refusal to let billions die because of bureaucracy." Some laughed, others bristled. Lyra watched from the field beside him, her expression unreadable, but when the meeting ended, she inclined her head slightly in recognition. The human had presence. That presence mattered. Back in the protocol chamber, the final phase of the synthesis began. This time, the projections were more complex than ever. Holographic strands of genetic code intertwined with energy fields, pulsing with the rhythm of two species, DNA mapping together. Lyra's body was connected to arrays that monitored every heartbeat, every neural spike, every molecular fluctuation. Jax stood opposite her, suit humming softly, heart racing, mind racing faster. "Are you ready?" he asked. Lyra's pale eyes met his. "I am operational, you." "As ready as anyone can be," he replied. He stepped into the field and the sensors adjusted instantly, calibrating to his human biology. He could feel the energy brushing against his skin, soft, insistent, alive. For the first few minutes, nothing happened except the quiet hum of equipment. Then, gradually, the holographic strands began to resonate. Lyra's markers synchronized with his. Immune responses were triggered, genetic compatibility confirmed. The virus encountered adaptive resistance, slowed, then faltered. "You are stabilizing," Lyra said, voice tight with relief. Jax's chest tightened. "We're doing it, we're actually doing it." But then the system flashed red. Interference. Mutation rate spiking unexpectedly. "Not good," Lyra said calmly, though her fingers twitched slightly. Jax frowned. "You've got a plan, right?" Lyra's gaze narrowed. "We must override the automated controls. Human intuition is required to compensate for adaptive variance." Jax blinked. "You mean me?" "Yes," she said deadpan. "You are unpredictable, that is an advantage." It was absurd, it was terrifying, and yet it worked, following her guidance. He initiated manual calibration, his instincts and judgment filling in the gaps where the station's AI could not compute. Slowly, carefully, the virus was brought under control. The holographic lines shifted from red to green. Stability increased incrementally, then significantly, until the first confirmed reversal appeared. The virus's adaptive mutation had been neutralized. Lyra exhaled, a sound faint but unmistakably human in relief. "The window is closing, but we have a chance." Jax smiled, exhausted and exhilarated. "We're going to make it." News traveled fast. Across the station, scientists began updating models. Numbers that once predicted inevitable extinction now shifted upward, cautious optimism replacing despair. Species that had doubted humans now watched as one human and one alien turned the tide. HFY, Jax muttered under his breath, watching reports of alien patients stabilizing. Humans actually matter. Lyra turned toward him, her long ears brushing the edge of the projection field. "You are surprisingly useful." "Stop, you're making me blush, and I'm wearing an impossible suit." She allowed herself a small, rare smile. Recognition, emotional, not calculated. Jax grinned. "That's all I needed." The final hurdle was political rather than scientific. Lyra's species required her presence to validate the synthesis legally and culturally. That meant traveling to the capital, facing elders who had exiled her, negotiating authority while still managing the fragile cure. Jax insisted on accompanying her. "I'm not leaving you to bureaucrats and judges who treat math like gospel," he said. Lyra studied him. "You are audacious." "I'm human," he replied simply. They arrived at the capital aboard the reinforced shuttle, greeted by alien council chambers carved from living crystal, walls that resonated with authority. Lyra's presence alone caused murmurs. Jax's presence caused outright confusion. He stood, awkward and human, next to her poised elegance. "Princess Lyra," a council elder intoned, voice amplified. "You have returned." Lyra inclined her head. "I have, and the cure is prepared, but it will require collaboration with one human." Gasps and whispers followed. Many representatives had assumed some automated solution, not an active participant. Jax stepped forward. "That human is me." A low murmur rippled through the chamber. Lyra's gaze met his. "Do not falter." Jax swallowed. "I won't." Over the next several hours they presented the results, ran live trials and demonstrated stabilization across multiple systems. Lyra's body, strengthened by the synthesis, stood as proof that cooperation worked. Humans were no longer passive observers. They were participants. They were capable. They were indispensable. Council after council ratified the process. Skeptics were silenced not by rhetoric, but by results. The HFY theme could not be denied. Human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability had saved an alien species and changed the galaxy's trajectory. When the formalities ended, Lyra and Jax found themselves alone in the chamber's upper balcony, looking out at a skyline of crystalline towers reflecting starlight. "You did well," Lyra said softly, almost to herself. "You did well too," Jax replied. "And you still have that face that tells me I'm going to break something every 5 minutes." She allowed a quiet laugh. "Perhaps, but now we can choose not only survive." He turned to her. "We actually get a choice." "Yes, about what comes next." And so they chose, not because of prophecy, not because of obligation, not because the universe demanded it, but because they had survived together, had learned trust, resilience, and the value of a single human decision. Months later, the plague was no longer a threat. It had been slowed, understood, and managed. Lyra returned to her people, not as a pawn, not as a solution, but as a strategist and advocate, reshaping the structures that had once limited her. Jax remained, a human emissary and collaborator, bridging species, cultures, and systems. They traveled together when they could, sent messages when they could not. And when the galaxy finally allowed a moment of peace, they stood side by side on the balcony of the central station, looking out at stars that no longer burned with imminent death, but with possibility. "You are different," Lyra said quietly. "So are you," Jax replied. She studied him. "I no longer feel like a variable." "You never were," he said. "You were a person." Her long fingers brushed his, warm, steady, alive. "And you," she said softly, "no longer hide behind humor quite so much." Jax laughed. "Hey, I still hide. I'm just better at stepping out when it matters." The galaxy remained vast, dangerous, unreasonable. But somewhere within it, 2 species survived, not because of prophecy, conquest, or hierarchy, but because one human had chosen to act and one alien had chosen to trust. Jax looked at the stars, feeling for the first time that he belonged somewhere. "Next time," he said with a crooked grin, "let's save the galaxy with less paperwork." Lyra's laughter echoed softly through the quiet of space. And for the first time, the universe felt survivable.